Hey everybody, Greg Rice from Nexus Property Management, and I'm not in the bucket today. I don't know when I'll be back in the bucket, to be honest, but I am here with you today to talk about four-year college degrees. Do they make sense anymore? And the reason why I'm talking about this is because the idea came to me while listening to Theo Von and Mike Rowe. And Mike Rowe, you may remember from Dirty Jobs. Dirty Jobs was, I would say, at its peak probably in like 2008, 2009. I remember I was like a senior in high school and I was seeing him do all of these crazy things like painting bridge cables. I remember he had like mittens on and he was painting suspended bridge cables in like New York City by hand. I remember him making water towers in New York City and assembling the old ones and just in sewers and, cleaning out concrete trucks. I mean, you name it, the guy did it. And I loved it and I respected it because it showed the underbelly and the unsung heroes of our society, the blue collar, right? The white collars, the blue collars, yes. And that's how I was raised, and that's how my mind still operates and thinks to this day. So, what ended up happening though for me is in 2009, I went to Johnson & Wales. I went there for a 4-year bachelor's degree. Now they're doing them in 3 years, which is interesting. But I went because it was ingrained. It was kind of propaganda. It was hardwired. Everybody else was doing it. There was no other way other than military to go about your young adult years. That's how I was brought up. Okay, and my parents, both of them, did not go to college, but my sister went to college, and they wanted us to have a better opportunity in life than they did. So school was promoted and funding was available. I got scholarships, I got student loans, things like that, and was able to go. But now I'm looking at it in 2025 wondering if does it make sense the way it used to? And is it really what you need in today's world and today's job market to be successful? Let's look at a quick example. A public school teacher in Rhode Island, if you put up the average salary for a public school teacher in Rhode Island, I believe Google has it at $45,000 per year. Now, if you type in average salary of a plumber in Rhode Island, I believe it comes up at about $60,000, which is 33% more. And that's just a quick example of the difference and also the investment, okay? Because you shouldn't be thinking, how do I get a job? How do I have you should be thinking, how do I establish and create and build a career, a lifestyle, right? How do I have upward trajectory and mobility? It shouldn't be like, how do I get a job and stay employed for 30 years and hate every minute of it? That's an old school mentality. If you look at the cost of college, we'll just say for all intents and purposes, it costs you today $200,000 to go to a public, private, moderately affordable school. $50,000 per year for your tuition, for your lodging, for your meals, for your expenses, for your books. Just say $50K a year. And you take out student loans for that whole amount of $200,000. If you're taking out student loans at today's rates, say it's 5, 6, maybe 7%, you're probably going to pay $100,000 to $150,000 on top of the $200,000 in the life of that loan repayment. And most of those loans are 10 to 20-year loans. And obviously, if you do a 10-year, you pay less interest. But if you do the 20-year, like most people, you're going to be spending about $1,500 a month for your student loan payment. Now, back to that same example of a public school teacher, you're making $45,000 a year, and we have to take off $1,500 a month for that repayment. That's what? 1,500 times 12, what's that? 18,000. So now as a public school teacher, you're actually making 27,000. And then you factor in rent, you factor in your groceries, your utilities, your car payment, you're homeless. You're absolutely homeless. All right, now you look at the plumber. Maybe the plumber did vocational school for 1 year, maybe 2 years. Okay, what's that cost? 10,000, maybe 15,000. You lived at home while you did that, so you didn't have dorm, travel, expenses, right? Maybe you're living with your parents still, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever. And now you're in a field at 20 years old making 60,000. And this is just a simple example, right? There's a million of them. But I just want something common and simple for you to see the juxtaposition, today's word, of what you're getting and what you're spending to get that versus what other routes that you may have that are against, I guess, the hardwired grain of our minds. Must be teacher, must be white collar, right? Must be in office, must not get hands dirty, is kind of what my generation was taught and told. Work with your mind, not your hands. And I'm seeing a shift as a landlord because I am having how much difficulty? A lot of difficulty trying to find trades workers. And thankfully, after 13 years, I've established a good crew of guys, electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, painters, drywall, engineers, surveyors, all these people that I've used. It took over a decade for me to get that and garner that group. But most people, if they call and say, oh, I need schematics for an addition, or oh, I need my floor replaced, good luck trying to get somebody. And then when you do get somebody, how much money are you going to spend? So there's opportunity in the blue collar trades because there was such a shift, such a push away from the blue collar. I would say starting in the mid 90s, I would say maybe late 90s, the shift was put into, get a liberal arts degree, get an environmental degree, right? Get some type of history degree, be a teacher, be an administrator, be a human resources. Don't work with your hands. And now we're starting to see 20, 30 years later, the pendulum shift where plumbers and electricians can make just as much as doctors, right? You call a plumber, you're going to spend $200-300 an hour. And, if they're working 40 hours a week, they're making 8-10 grand times 52 weeks. Do the math. That's serious bread. And the benefit is not only are you starting younger, but you have no debt. You are in charge of your own business a lot of times. And yes, you can work for a company and be a plumber, be an electrician, but a lot of times they're independent operators. They have a van, they maybe have a crew of a couple guys, or they're solo, and they go out and they make their day and they make their own money. And that's also been the wave of the future. Instead of calling the big corporate outfit, I would rather call Joe and Sons Flooring. I would rather call Botello Electric. I would rather call anybody that's a small business and give them the money than calling, what's a national brand? I don't even know because I never call them. I would rather call the local guy. So there's a lot of benefits in my mind to young men and young women who want to get involved and work with these as opposed to just going to college because you're supposed to, or because my mom said so, or my friends are going, and being saddled with $250,000 in debt to make $45,000 a year. You don't have to be a business major to know that's a shitty deal. That's a shitty arrangement and doesn't make sense. But you get the prestige. I'm a teacher, right? You get that status, you get the security, you get your summers off. Right, there's a lot of benefits, and I'm not saying it's wrong to do the 4-year degree. I'm just saying challenge your thinking, especially if you have children, challenge their thinking to say, all right, you don't want to go to college? Why? Tell me why. Tell me what you're going to do to get a 4-year head start on the people that are going to college. How are you going to keep and level up with them? Because some employers won't hire you unless you have that 4-year degree. So what are you going to do to offset that shrinking possibility that you now have? But also, there are plenty of jobs that don't require a 4-year degree. Take real estate, for example. You could be a real estate agent, a real estate broker, and never have spent 1 minute in a college. You can be a police officer, protecting and serving. You could be a pharmacy technician, dispensing medications. You could be a personal trainer. You could be a dental hygienist, right? You could be an insurance agent. There's so many different fields, and it doesn't always have to equal blue collar either. There's white collar opportunities without a degree. Same thing as there are blue collar. It's tomatoes. Whatever you want, there's something available. And consider the cost, right? The expense to do that. The expense to do that is only going up. And the need for working class folks. And working class is not what it used to be. Working class is becoming upper class, upper middle class. So just wanted to throw this out there. I've been through college, so who am I to say don't go? I think it was very beneficial to me. I was able to do a cooperative, a co-op they called it, at Johnson & Wales, where you do class, but you also do an internship. So I would go to the Rhode Island State Police, do my hours there, and I would get credit as if that was a class. So it gave me on-the-job training. I was able to build a network, start to get a head start on what's going on, know the people, know the players. So that was a nice little blend that the university offered. So I kind of got the best of both worlds there. But if I had to do it today, right, if I had to make that decision today, I mean, I probably wouldn't go. I probably wouldn't, knowing what I know. I would say I would get into contracting, general construction management, and still be involved in the real estate. Maybe you become a landlord young. That's something that nobody ever talked about, ever talked about in school or in my social circles, about owning a rental property. And you can do that with a small down payment. So you could potentially become a contractor, own your own property, and kind of build that from there. Or you could own a property and be a plumber, be an electrician, and have both irons in the fire. So don't just think that you got to follow the crowd, and the value that it has and how much it pays you back is not what it used to be. Okay? Just because you have a bachelor's degree don't mean shit. You could still end up with a shit job paying you 40, 50 grand a year. And there's people that don't have that degree making much more than that. So challenge your mind and challenge societal norms. Because just because it's normal and everybody else is doing it doesn't make it right. But my last point, and I'll let you go, is the social experience. I think that college, being in that environment, living away from home, learning how to cook for yourself and supplies, and being responsible, not staying out too late, staying healthy. It's important for you to know that stuff. And I kind of had an idea about it, but once you're on your own for 4 years, the freshman 15 wasn't made up. It's a real thing. People can let themselves go. So that part of college I really appreciated. And obviously girlfriends, getting a job, doing just having that freedom is irreplaceable. You can't match up to that. So there are some things that no matter what the cost is or what society says, you can't duplicate that experience. So for whatever that's worth. And again, thank you to Mike Rowe for giving me this idea. And if you want to check out that interview, you can check it out on Theo Vaughn's podcast on YouTube and Spotify. So once again, Greg Rice, not in the bucket. Your property and your education managed.